Hello guys, welcome to the series of tutorial on Angular material with Angular. In the previous videos, we have installed and tested Angular material in our application. Now let's see different types of buttons which comes with Angular material. This is one of the widely used UI element in our applications or websites development. In Angular material, mainly there are four different types of buttons for which you don't need to write any CSS codes to use it in our applications. The first set of buttons in Angular are basic buttons. Basic buttons will not have any background, border or effects. These are the simplest ones which we can be used in our application. On most of these buttons, you will see a background color for these buttons. So that's the only effect which we can see in the basic buttons. And in Angular material, on top of these, you can use the color palettes for these buttons. You can observe here different palettes are used, such as primary, accent, and warm. And the second set of buttons are raised buttons. These buttons will have raised button effects with a bit of shadow on these. As you can see here, we have a shadow for these buttons which looks like a 3D buttons which we can be used in our applications. And the third set of buttons are stroked buttons which will have only borders and there will be no color as a background for these buttons. And you can observe there is no shadow and the text within these buttons are of different colors. That is because of the different color palettes which comes with Angular palettes. And the fourth set of buttons are flat buttons. These buttons are flat in nature, that's why these are called as flat buttons. And these buttons don't have any border and these are filled with different colors. If you are using primary color palette, you will be getting blue color as a background color. And if you are using accent, pink color will be as a background. And similarly, red will be background color for one. So let's see these buttons one by one and we'll implement these in our Angular application. For that one, let me open code editor first. You can observe there is no code in our HTML template file. And if you preview this one in browser, you can see nothing is there in our web application now. As we know earlier, for any UI element to use in our application, we need to perform three steps. The first step is we need to import the module into our application. As we are using button, we have already imported the button module in our application. And the second step is we need to import that module in imports array. We have done that one as well in our previous video. So now two steps are completed. And the third step is we need to write code in our HTML template file. First, let's see the coding for basic buttons. For basic buttons, you need to have a button tag which is a HTML tag, and within that one you need to add an attribute as mat-button. That's the only thing you need to define here to get the basic buttons. And as I mentioned earlier, there are different color palettes are also available in Angular material. You can make use of that one as well by providing the another property as color. As you can see here, I have added color as a property and I have defined primary for this one. And similarly for the next button, I have added as accent, and for the final button, I have added warm as the color property. So let's save this one and go back to browser. Now you can observe we got four basic buttons in our application. The first one is basic one. For that one, we have not used any color palette. For the second one, we have used a primary color palette. That's why we got blue color text for that one. Similarly, for third one, we have added accent for which we got pink color text and a background when we mouse over on that one. Similarly, the final one is for one, that is red color. Similarly, for second type of button, that is raised button types, let's add code in our application. Let me add one break here. Similar to basic button where you have mentioned as mat-button, for raised buttons you need to add the property mat-raise-button. and other color palettes are same like what we have defined earlier now. Save this one and go back to browser. Now you can see we got second set of buttons which are looking like 3D buttons here, which have shadow for those buttons. Similarly, let's add other two types of buttons as well. Let's go back to our code editor. Let me add one break and add code for both buttons. And here you can observe for stroked buttons similar to raised buttons, you need to mention the property as matte-stroked button. And for flat button, you can mention as matte-flat-button. That's the only change you need to do for these two types of button. So let's save this one and go back to browser. Now you can observe we got two more types of buttons, that is stroked and flat buttons. Stroked buttons have only borders and there is no fill for that one, and flat buttons are flat in nature. These are similar to raised buttons but there is no shadow, which makes these buttons looks like a flat buttons, and raised buttons looks like a 3D buttons just because of the shadow which is added to these buttons. These are the different types of buttons available in Angular material. That's it guys for this video. Thanks for watching this. If you like this video, please click on like button, share it with others and subscribe to my channel.